Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I want to share something that might change the way you see yourself, and maybe even shake your confidence a little. Are you ready? Here's the truth. You were never hard to read. Not to the people who truly mattered. Not to the ones who were really paying attention. They noticed the shift in your voice when you told a lie, the way you laughed too loudly when you felt invisible, and how you kept talking just to avoid silence, because stillness made you feel exposed. Someone saw the real you once, not by what you said but by how you existed. They noticed the parts you've tried to hide or control for years, and you didn't even realize it. No one teaches us that being seen isn't loud. It's quiet, it's slow, it's like surgery, precise and deep. The best readers of people never tell you what they see. They simply remember everything. This isn't about mind tricks or reading body language like a magician. It's about understanding people at a deeper level, where truth leaks through the pauses, the tone beneath the tone, and the words left unsaid. And by the end of this video, you won't just know how to read others, you'll realize they've been reading you all along. Most people think they're hard to read. They wear confidence like armor. They speak with carefully chosen words. They present themselves in a polished way, not because they're fake, but because they're afraid to be real. But someone like Nietzsche saw right through that. He believed people don't speak from truth. They speak from protection. Language, he said, wasn't created to reveal who we are. It was built to help us survive, to belong, and to hide. When someone talks, you're not always hearing their soul. You're hearing the mask they wear, explaining why it deserves to be accepted. We trust words too much, but real truth, it leaks out. It shows up in tension, silence, and in the gap between what someone says and how they say it. Nietzsche didn't just study language. He studied contradiction. He believed the truth isn't in what people say. It's in what they avoid. And once you start seeing the world this way, it becomes clear that overly confident man who talks nonstop, he's afraid of stillness. The perfectionist who needs everything under control, she's battling chaos inside. People who judge others loudly often hate what they can't face in themselves. People are not mysteries. They're patterns. Patterns shaped by pain, childhood, and fear, repeated until they become part of someone's personality. And when you learn to see people this way, you'll never go back. What once looked like arrogance might just be insecurity. What felt like rejection might now seem like self-protection. What used to hurt you, now it starts to make sense. You don't need a psychology degree to read people. You just need to stop believing everything they say and start noticing what they show. As Nietzsche said, people aren't hiding from you. They're hiding from themselves. Every deep soul wears a mask, and that's not just poetic, it's powerful. Because once you understand this, you stop trusting the surface. You stop thinking someone's smile means they're okay. You stop assuming kindness always equals purity. Masks aren't worn because people are fake. They're worn because the truth can be too painful or dangerous to show. From childhood we learn don't cry too loud, or you're too sensitive. Don't ask too many questions, or you're difficult. Don't shine too bright, or you're full of yourself. So we adjust. We become more acceptable. We shapeshift into what the world wants us to be, and call it personality. But Nietzsche knew the truth. He believed identity, as we show it, is just a mask, not a lie, but a way to survive. And the deeper a person is, the more layers their mask has, the more profound the soul, the more dangerous their truth can feel, both to others and to themselves. But here's the catch. Masks always leak. No matter how carefully they're built, they slip. You can see it in someone's body language. The tense shoulders, the fidgeting hands. You can hear it in their voice, the forced tone, the empty laugh. You notice it when the conversation gets too real, or the silence gets too loud. The real identity lives in contradictions, like someone who says they're fine while clenching their jaw. The person who preaches positivity, but can't sit alone in silence. The one who says they don't care what others think, but constantly checks how they're being seen. That's not lying. That's the mask cracking. And if you pay attention, you'll always spot the real person beneath the performance. Not perfect, not polished, but honest, scared raw. And once you stop believing in masks, you don't just start reading people, You start recognizing your own masks too. That's where real clarity begins. Not when you figure others out, but when you stop pretending you were never like them. Reading people isn't magic. It's not some rare gift. It's not about intuition or being special. It's about paying attention to the things most people ignore. The truth is, people are predictable, not because they're shallow, but because they keep repeating stories they haven't healed from. Some people say, I just have a feeling about them. But smart readers don't rely on feelings. They rely on patterns, small, repeated signals in conversations, moods, and moments. So here's a question for you. Have you ever worn a mask just to feel accepted? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Good readers don't rely on guesses. They rely on patterns. It starts with the little things, a shift in tone, a slight hesitation before someone agrees with something they don't truly believe, the way someone's voice goes higher when they're trying to sound confident, but really aren't. Then come the contradictions, like the person who says they're super chill, but always has to correct everyone. The man who claims he doesn't care about status, but keeps dropping big names in every conversation. The woman who talks about how independent she is, yet constantly looks for someone to choose her. These aren't random. They're clues, signs of deeper stories people are trying to hide. Timing matters too. That odd pause when someone is asked a personal question. That moment when they repeat themselves just to avoid silence. That sudden topic change when things get too real. These aren't flaws. They're fault lines. Cracks where the mask slips and the truth begins to leak out. Smart people don't focus on what's obvious. They look for what feels off. They don't get lost in details. They read emotional fingerprints, the tiny unconscious things people do when they're not even aware of it. Because real clarity doesn't come from magic or intuition. It comes from discipline, from staying quiet long enough to see what people are trying not to reveal. Once you learn to see these patterns, the world stops feeling so random. You stop being blindsided. And the mask everyone wears, it starts to look like glass. These aren't just insights. They're tools, not to use against others, but to remove your own illusions. Nietzsche didn't study people to judge them. He studied them to understand them. And what he saw wasn't always beautiful. First, everyone wears a mask. Not to lie, but to survive. What you see in people is not their true self. It's the version of them that made it through rejection, pain, and fear. The louder someone's confidence is, often the more fragile their self-worth. Second, we tend to hate in others what we refuse to face in ourselves. If you mock arrogance, check your own insecurities. If you shame others for being fake, look at the masks you wear. Many times criticism is just a mirror we hold up to others to avoid looking at ourselves. Third, silence speaks louder than words. Truth leaks through in pauses, sighs, and fake smiles. People avoid what reveals them. And that avoidance is a kind of confession. Fourth, before people lie to others, they lie to themselves. They don't fake it just to trick you. They rehearse denial to survive. I'm fine. I've moved on. I don't care. They believe it first because they need to. Fifth, constant criticism isn't deep insight. It's personal pain. When someone always points out what's wrong with the world, they're really revealing what's broken inside of them. Every complaint has a backstory. Sixth, confidence can be a mask for guilt. The people who seem calm, collected, and always in control, they're often using that image to bury something they haven't forgiven in themselves. Seventh, exaggeration is a red flag. I never care. I'm always happy. I don't need anyone. The more extreme the claim, the more fear is hiding underneath it. Eighth, people who crave control on the outside are usually dealing with chaos on the inside. That hunger for control doesn't come from strength. It comes from a fear of falling apart. So now I shall leave you with this question. Have you ever caught yourself saying something out loud that you didn't truly believe, just to protect your image? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know how you see this in yourself or others. People who micromanage everything, they're not strong, they're scared. Controlling others is easier than facing your own fears. It feels safer to manage the outside world than to confront the chaos inside yourself. Ninth, loud morality often hides a need to feel superior. The more someone shouts about their virtues, the more likely they're hiding something behind that noise. Real goodness is quiet. Loudness is often insecurity in disguise. 10th, people don't fear getting hurt. They fear being seen. Vulnerability isn't scary because of pain. It's scary because it threatens the identity we've spent years building. Being exposed feels like the death of who we pretend to be. 11th, what someone defends the most is often what they secretly doubt. If someone keeps over-explaining their beliefs, they're not convincing you. They're trying to convince themselves. 12th, the need to be remembered often hides the fear of being forgotten. The person who always wants the spotlight, who's loud online or in every room, isn't full of themselves. They're terrified that they don't matter. 13th, envy wears the mask of hate. People don't always attack what they hate. They attack what they secretly want, but believe they can never have. They don't hate you. They believe they can't be you. 14th, people don't speak from pure logic. They speak from pain. Beliefs aren't just facts. They're built on scars. Every strong opinion often has a deeper wound beneath it. 15th, childhood doesn't disappear. It replays. The adult who dominates conversations was likely ignored as a child. The woman who hides her emotions, she was punished for expressing them. Our behavior is our biography. It tells our story, whether we realize it or not. 16th, people often hide uncertainty by becoming rigid. The more someone clings to a black and white worldview, the more fragile their identity is. Flexibility is real strength. Dogma, it's fear with a microphone. 17th, desperation can wear the mask of independence. When someone says, "I don't need anyone," it might not be strength. It could be pain. Maybe they've simply given up on being chosen. Some people isolate not because they're strong, but because they're tired of being let down. 18th, patterns are confessions. You don't need someone to explain who they are. Just watch their habits, how they act when they're hurt, who they chase, who they avoid. Their patterns aren't random. They're scars being replayed. Final reflection. Nietzsche didn't share these truths to help us control people. He shared them so we'd stop mistaking noise for truth, performance for personality, and trauma for identity. Once you start seeing these patterns, you realize people aren't mysterious. They're exposed if you just know how to look. Every joke,
Every compliment,
every insult,
every silence.
it all comes from somewhere. The mistake most people make is thinking that behavior is either random or fully rational. But Nietzsche knew better. People don't speak from logic. They speak from fear. They don't argue because they're confident. They argue because their belief is all they have left. They don't brag because they feel proud. They brag because they're scared of being overlooked. They don't stay silent because they're calm. They stay silent because somewhere in childhood, they learned silence meant safety. So the real question isn't what someone says, it's why they said it. A person who interrupts constantly? Maybe they were once ignored. A man who mocks emotions? He was likely taught that vulnerability equals weakness. That friend who never asks how you're doing. They probably learned that attention is a resource, and no one ever gave it to them. And here's the twist. They're not doing it on purpose. They're surviving on autopilot. Behind the sharpest minds, there's often a fear of looking stupid. Behind perfectionism, guilt that's never been spoken. Behind the hunger for power, shame for what they couldn't fix, what they couldn't become, or what they failed to do. What pattern in yourself do you think might be a scar from the past? Drop it in the comments. Your story might help someone else feel less alone. People often bury shame for who they've become, and shame for the parts of themselves they had to hide just to get through life. You won't usually hear them talk about it. Instead, you'll see it in how quickly they correct others, how tightly they hold on to rules, or how they shut down when things get close and personal. If you're paying attention, not just watching the surface, but trying to understand where that behavior really comes from, you'll realize something important. Behavior isn't just a message. It's a shield, a cover built around a deep wound. When you stop reacting to the surface and start asking, what pain is this protecting? You don't just become better at reading people, you become free. The world stops feeling like it's about you. The anger, the coldness, the distance, it was never about you. It was always about them. And it always will be. We live in an age where it's easy to mistake masks for truth and noise for honesty. But once you learn to see beneath the surface, everything changes. What's one behavior you've noticed in yourself that might be a shield for something deeper? Share your thoughts with me. I'm sitting here to listen. People hide behind high performance in social media, at work, even in conversations with people they love. We are always on stage. Every Instagram caption, every "I'm doing great" text, every outfit, every opinion, every delayed reply is a kind of performance. But Nietzsche saw this long before filters and followers existed. He said, people don't live as they are. They live as the version of themselves they believe will be accepted. That's the real problem. We think people are hiding from us, but most of the time, they're hiding from themselves. You see it every day. The man who talks nonstop about how strong he is because he's terrified of being seen as weak. The woman who shares endless quotes about healing because she hasn't allowed herself to feel anything real in years. The friend who always jokes around because silence makes him remember pain he hasn't healed from. People aren't fake. They're scared that if they drop the act, they'll be abandoned, rejected, or forgotten. So, they curate their kindness to be admired. They use their beliefs like weapons to feel powerful. They show off their independence to hide the loneliness they won't admit. And the scariest part, they don't even realize they're doing it. When you ask someone how they're doing, they smile and say, "I'm good." But their jaw is tight, their shoulders tense, their laugh a little too forced, their eyes flicker when yours don't. They aren't lying to trick you. They're lying to protect the version of themselves they've learned is safe. The strong one, the perfect one, the healer, the unbothered, the spiritual, the always in control person. Because in a world that values image over honesty, telling the truth, even to yourself, becomes dangerous. But truth leaks out anyway. It slips through cracks in control. The way someone changes the subject when things get too real. The way they over-apologize for small things. The way they laugh too loudly, trying to hide the cracks beneath. These aren't just quirks. They're confessions in disguise. They're the ego's way of saying, I don't know how to be seen without being destroyed. And when life's pressure builds, loss, stress, time, the performance breaks down. That's when you get the real moment, the sigh, the pause. They didn't mean to show you. Have you ever caught yourself performing a version of yourself just to feel safe or accepted? What was that like? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. That moment, the pause that lasts just 1 second too long, the sudden silence after someone seems so sure, the eyes that fill with tears before they finish speaking, the breath they take before answering, like they're holding something back. That's not weakness, that's the soul surfacing, even if just for a second, because the truest version of a person is never who they perform to be. It's who they become when they forget to perform. If you're someone who notices these moments, who feels the energy shift in a room before anyone says a word, who catches when someone's mask starts to crack, you're not just observant, you're witnessing something sacred. The version of them they haven't even dared to meet yet, the part they've buried beneath identity, survival, and the need to be accepted. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You begin to realize that reading people isn't about judging them. It's about compassion. Because when someone breaks character, they're finally showing you who they really are. There's a moment that comes quietly, suddenly, without warning, but never without consequences. You're sitting in a conversation, listening as someone complains, boasts, or talks, and for the first time, you don't react. You don't take it personally. You don't feel attacked or the need to defend yourself. You just see them. The patterns, the tone, the pacing, how they over-explain, how their confidence feels hollow, how their silence is too loud, and suddenly it clicks. This isn't about you.
It was never about you.
The things that used to anger you, the coldness, arrogance, clinginess, they don't hurt the same way anymore. Because now you recognize them for what they really are. Wounds wearing armor. It's not weakness, it's survival. dressed up as dominance, silence, or virtue. And when you finally see that, something irreversible happens. Empathy becomes inevitable. Not the kind of empathy people perform to win praise, but the kind born from grief, the kind that comes from truly understanding how hard it is to be human. Have you ever witnessed someone's mask crack and felt a deeper connection to who they really are? What did you learn from that moment? I'd love to hear your stories. Empathy is what makes us truly human. Once you see what people are really running from, the guilt behind their bragging, the fear behind their need for control, the sadness behind their silence, you stop focusing on the mask and start recognizing the pain that built it. That's what Nietzsche wanted. He didn't give us these insights to gain power over others or to manipulate them. He wanted us to stop being fooled. The real danger isn't that people lie, it's that they believe their own lies. Then they expect you to live inside those lies, to respond to the character they play, not the truth behind the role. If you can't see through it, you fall for the theater. You chase approval from people who are deeply insecure. You fear rejection from someone terrified of connection. You feel less than someone who's secretly breaking inside. But when you finally see people clearly, everything changes. You don't flinch at rejection anymore, because you understand it's not the truth. It's just a wound reacting. You don't get pulled into conflict because drama isn't danger. It's just emotional chaos. You don't get fooled by loud confidence because loud isn't strength, it's fear. You start reading the situation instead of reacting to emotions. In that space, clarity ends confusion. You stop asking, why are they doing this to me? Instead, you wonder, what part of them hurts so much that this is how they survive? In that clarity, anger fades. You're no longer fighting reality or taking someone else's trauma as your truth. You don't make their problems your responsibility. You don't become weaker. You become unshakable. Not because you're cold, but because you're awake. Awake to the patterns behind behavior, to the fears behind personalities. Most people aren't dangerous. They're just scared. And once you see that, you stop fighting and start choosing to understand. When you see people clearly, manipulation dies, resentment fades, and power returns to understanding. You weren't becoming a reader. You were remembering something ancient, something buried deep inside. The truth has always been visible. You just weren't taught how to see it. People leak their stories in every gesture, every contradiction, every silence they try to fill. Now you know. More importantly, you see that what looked like ego was fear, what felt like rejection was self-protection, and what you once took personally was never really about you. You're not just reading people now, you're remembering that the patterns were always there. You just needed someone to point them out. Here's the paradox. The more clearly you see others, the less you feel the need to defend yourself. What used to confuse or hurt you no longer touches you. You don't react because you understand. You're not standing above people anymore. You're standing with them, finally seeing what they've been too scared to face. This was never about judgment. It was about waking up to the pain behind the perfection, the wounds behind the armor, the humanity behind the behavior. If you've ever felt misunderstood, like people misread your silence, your strength, or your softness, now you understand they weren't trying to misunderstand you. They were wearing masks too, and people in masks can't recognize the true faces of others. But here's what Nietzsche understood best. Power isn't about being unreadable. It's about being fully and deeply seen and still being chosen. That's not weakness. That's the highest form of strength. So remember this, you were never truly hidden. They already know who you are. Now finally, you do too. Have you ever realized someone was wearing a mask? Just like you were? How did that change the way you connected with them?